Hey kitties, it's Triple Feature Tuesday once again, and this week we're going to look at some video game movies that were not actually based on video games. Yeah, we're going to go back to that halcyon era known as the 1980s, when video games were not the ubiquitous thing that they are right now. Like, at this point, there were arcade games. You would find them in like supermarkets, mall shops, pharmacies, and a whole bunch of rapidly growing video arcades, places devoted just to playing arcade games. But like PC and console gaming hadn't taken off yet. But Hollywood, being the vultures that they are, wanted to see if they could cash in on it right now. So we needed material. The biggest games of the time, like Centipede, Pac-Man, Donkey Kong, Pong, and Space Invaders, don't really lend themselves to a three-act narrative structure. You know, unless and until you make Pixels, which just kind of sandwiches them all together. I've seen Pixels, because I had to watch all of the movies in which Adam Sandler and Kevin James are buddies. Thank you, Steven. So our triple feature is going to go in order of increasing immersion inside the video game. So our menu will include Cloak and Dagger, The Last Starfighter, and Tron. So Davey, played by Elliot himself, Henry Thomas, is an avid player of a Cloak and Daggery role-playing game aptly named Cloak and Dagger, which is also the name of this film, Cloak and Dagger, because there's a lot of spy shit inside of it. So, Davey is not having a great time of it. His mother has passed away, and his father, played by a surprisingly paternal Dabney Coleman, is a airline pilot slash... I mean, he's not really checked out, it's just he's busy. He's an airline pilot. They do not spend a lot of time at home. So to help Davey deal with all of that is his imaginary friend. Keep in mind, he's like 10 or 11 years old. His imaginary friend, super spy Jack Flack, played also by Dabney Coleman in a fairly paternal, buddy-buddy role that, only Davey can see. So, in a textbook call to action, Davey runs across some sort of scientist who is being shot by evil people, and the scientist gives Davey a Cloak and Dagger cartridge, gives him a mysterious number, and tells him to run. And run he does. And for the rest of the movie, Davey is trying to figure out what is the deal with this cartridge. What is the information that is so valuable that people are being killed? Who to trust, when to trust them, and when to just run away. And it's, you know what? This movie is still pretty good. This was one of those movies that was on TV all of the time when I was a kid, and it was really, it was fun to see Elliot again and other stuff. That's when you started realizing, oh, these people can be in different movies and playing different characters. And it was cool being, thinking that like at 10 years old, you whisked into a super spy adventure. This is amazing. The thing, though, is that this movie was rated PG in the 80s, but PG in the 80s is not PG now. So this kid is in serious danger the entire time. Like, Michael Murphy is the head of the bad guys, and if Michael Murphy is one of those actors that plays varying degrees of scumbag. And so when he's going after Davey, he is not messing around, and he is pulling guns on a child all the time. And the child, in response, is pulling some fairly realistic toy guns against these spies as well. But don't worry, he's white, so it's not like he's gonna get, shot. But you have this like extended sequence where like Michael Murphy has Davey cornered, and Davey has a real gun. Michael Murphy has this tricked-out, gigantic-looking Uzi with a suppressor on it, which suppressors on Uzis or like anything, suppressors on anything other than like a sniper rifle or a small pistol are always just hilarious to me. But he's got a suppressor on an Uzi, and he goes into graphic detail about how he's going to shoot Davey in the knees before shooting him in the stomach, so he dies slow and painfully. But don't worry, Davey shoots him instead, at the behest of his imaginary friend, who then, of course, dies an extended, protracted death. Like, there's a lot of drop-dead Fred issues with the level of reality attributed to imaginary friend Jack Black. So, like, don't get me wrong, I am on Team Sanity, but Jack Black knows things that Davy doesn't. He, like, not just like strategies or a more cold-blooded way of thinking of things that Davy might be able to, but actual like facts Davy doesn't know. And then in his death scene, which again, the imaginary friend has a bloody death scene in this kids movie. He references being his father's imaginary friend before as like a more cowboy and Indian character. So I don't know what they're trying to do with this. Like, the whole movie could have just been about the spy thing, but then we have this imaginary friend angle that fits but doesn't. It's just kind of weird. But it's very serious throughout the whole film. Like, Davy's friends are being kidnapped and or murdered. If you think Dabney Coleman playing a nice character, let alone two nice characters, is fun and against type, wait till you see William Forsythe playing the bespectacled tech nerd friend of Davy, who works in a combination computer repair store and or just general gaming nerd store. It doesn't matter. He's got Coke bottles. He's clearly a nerd. But funnily enough, in comparison to Tron later, Cloak and Dagger actually understands in the 80s what a video game system is and what it can do. Because a video game is just a computer that runs a very specific program, and they get into that, and they explain it, and it actually becomes a plot point, which is a lot of fun. But there's no actual transposition of Davy into the video game. He just gets wrapped up in an adventure that is very similar to the thing that he often does. And actually, that ties into the imaginary friend thing. In a lot of moments of the film, you're not exactly sure, is Davy's imagination running away with him, or are these people trying to kill him? And, as it turns out, they are. Because, again, this is 80s PG. Children are not special, and they can be murdered just like anybody else. Whereas Davy stumbles into his adventure, Alex Rogan's adventure lands on his doorstep. Alex Rogan is a high school senior whose life is not going great. He lives in a trailer park with his family, and he did not win the scholarship to go to college with his girlfriend, who is played by Catherine Mary Stewart from Night of the Comet. The only thing that really is going well for him is he is the best of the trailer park at playing the Last Starfighter, the arcade game that's by the trailer park office. And on one night, he actually not only beats his previous best score, he beats all the scores everywhere. He scores the highest amount of points on the Last Starfighter in recorded history. And not for nothing, there's a really great sense of community in the trailer park, because, like, okay, it's not really so much like, all their lives are miserable or anything. It's just, hey, an event is happening. This kid, you get the sense they all play the video game because it's there, and, this kid's better at it than everybody else. And, oh, look, this is a thing we can all bond over, and it's really nice when he beats the high score. But as it turns out, the Last Starfighter arcade game is a recruitment tool by Centauri, played by Robert Preston, the Music Man himself. And if the Music Man comes to your trailer park in some sort of space car that literally grows wings and whisks you into space to tell you that a video arcade game is actually a training / recruitment device, and you are the last hope to save the galaxy in an intergalactic war, well, then you're probably just high as balls. I don't know. It's insane. But it's kind of adorable because, in the 80s, there's this movie that comes out that goes against every single thing children's parents were saying. Like, TV and video games are going to rot your brain. No, actually being very good at a video game can not only lead you off to an adventure, you can be the savior of the entire galaxy. And even though that lesson was quickly brushed over by any respectable parents that to let their kids watch this movie, it has indeed come to pass. Because, dear God, are you seeing all the money people are winning playing Fortnite? This is insane. And so, Alex Rogan, played by Lance Guest, is in fact recruited by Star League to fight Zur and the Kodan Armada. And Lancecast does a pretty good job maintaining the right level of, awe / confused disbelief at anything that's happened. But of course, the entire fleet is destroyed because, like any good video game, it is all up to you, the one player, to save the entire universe. And luckily, Alex is not alone. He is teamed up with his rear, an alien named Grieg, played by Dan O'Herlihy. And this was really a lot of fun. Dan O'Herlihy, at that point, was a fairly older Irish actor who is delightful in everything. Don't get me wrong. You know him from RoboCop and Halloween 3, to name a few things. But he's in full face makeup and everything, and he's just chomping at the bit, acting through the makeup, and he's all excited about going to war, and we're going to save the day, or we're going to die trying, but either way, it's going to be exciting. And all of the battle sequences are filmed in CG. This was one of the earlier films to feature CGI to this extent. Literally any space sequence is computer generated. It's not like Star Wars where there were any physical models. And some people would look at these the space sequences and say they were dated. I would argue that they look the way they look in The Last Starfighter. So shut up. I love this movie because it's The Last Starfighter. It is delightful, and of course the day is saved and the battle is won, and everything's just a good time. And meanwhile, there's this whole other kind of alien teenage sex comedy happening on Earth because they leave a double for Alex, so nobody's the wiser, and everything is just crazy. It's similar in Cloak and Dagger in terms of we have these two, not necessarily competing plot threads, but you wouldn't normally put them together in the same movie, where we have Davey is in a spy thriller, plus he's got this imaginary friend. Alex is in a Star Wars space adventure, plus there's, teenage sex comedy stuff happening. But it all kind of gels together in a way that, movies in the 80s could, that they just don't even try to anymore, which is a shame. Also, keep in mind, Last Starfighter, directed by Nick Castle, who is the original Michael Myers. Not the actor that played Michael Myers, when the mask comes off, but the actual shape. That was who directed this movie, which I just found out about in researching this, and so that's just a hoot. And finally, there's Tron. Oh my god, Tron. Tron is still one of my absolute favorite things ever. So, whereas Davey stumbles into his movie, Alex's movie comes to him. Jeff Flynn, played by Jeff Bridges, is transported into the actual video game. We finally have it, the video game. The character goes into the video game. Jeff Bridges plays Flynn, who used to be one of the hotshot computer programmers at NCOM, who's just about ready to break away with all these brand new video games that he was designing, until a rival programmer, Ed Dillinger, played by the always delightful David Warner, steals them and has a meteoric rise to power and ousts Flynn, who ends up running the aptly named Flynn's Arcade, where he gets quarters for renting the machines that run on programs that he designed. But his computer programmer buddies, played by the lovely Cindy Morgan and the nerded up Bruce Boxleitner. It is so much fun how much they nerd Bruce Boxleitner up. They just comb his hair forward and put on glasses, again, like William Forsythe. Because if you have glasses, you're a nerd, and, prove me wrong. Come at me. I can see. I can see you coming. If you don't have your glasses, you can't see me coming, because you're a nerd. So they break in to NCOM. So they break into NCOM with the hope of fighting back against this AI called the MCP, the Master Control Program, that is running NCOM, because they can't access their program. Look, there are a lot of things about the plot of Tron. Look. There are a lot of things about the plot of Tron that 38 years of living with computers are going to make Tron seem like it's an absurd, ridiculous film. And it is, but not because it doesn't understand computers. This is a fantasy movie that is clothed in sci-fi elements. And let's not get started in the whole debate of fantasy versus sci-fi and what are there any differences other than, superficial, because there are, but we're not going to get into it. So suffice it to say, this movie is Alice in Wonderland, but instead of going to Wonderland, the guy goes into a computer, and so everything they talk about is computer terminology that is used completely inaccurately, with even a rudimentary understanding of how computers worked, which, 4 years later in Cloak and Dagger, they did know how the computers worked, but at this point they don't. But they made a visually stunning film. No film looks like Tron. Not even Tron Legacy looks like Tron, because, not for nothing, just about all of it was done on set or with optical special effects. This is one of the things that everybody takes for granted, but there's not a lot of CGI in Tron. There's the light cycle fights, the recognizers floating around, and the tanks, and maybe the solar sailor, like the solar sailor at distance shots. Those are computer generated. Just about everything else is all done on camera, or with traditional optical special effects. It's kind of fun. I highly recommend watching the feature-length documentary about the making of Tron, because it's fascinating to see what it actually looked like to make this movie, because everything is shot sort of photo negative, and then everything is reversed to make to get all the lights bright enough, and then to add the glowy lines and everything. But anyway, Flynn gets transported into the computer, but with some really dodgy science in terms. God damn it. You try explaining Tron. Flynn gets sucked into the computer and is forced to to play video games until he dies, or escapes by teaming up with the titular Tron and the oft-forgotten Ram. Tron and Ram are good programs that fight for the users. That's why they're blue, as opposed to the sellouts that fight for the MCP, and they're in red, and they're evil because red is evil. It's sort of like how glasses make you nerds, red makes you a bad person. I don't know. But either way, it's Alice in Wonderland, so Flynn is going along with everything, fighting tyrannical structures, helping to overthrow them, and getting back out of Wonderland and into the real world, where, of course, everything works out for everybody in the end. And in fact, everything works out for everybody in Tron and in The Last Starfighter. A lot of dead people in Cloak and Dagger. The one that is very, very explicitly a children's movie because it has a 10-year-old protagonist. A lot of dead people in that movie, but not so much. There are dead people in The Last Starfighter, but it's all aliens and it's intergalactic war, so it's fine. And in Tron, nobody actually dies. Some computer programs get de-rezzed, but that's about it. But man, and again, I don't think I really made a big point about this. Not a one of these were video games when the movies came out. I think the closest one was they started developing a Last Starfighter video game around the time they were working on the movie. The movie studio was working on a video game movie, and a video game company was working on a space video game, and so they kind of met in the middle and tailored each other's efforts to mirror each other. There was a Rings of Tron game after the Tron movie came out. I have absolutely no idea if there's an actual Cloak and Dagger game. Still really hold up and are still a lot of fun. Cloak and Dagger, The Last Starfighter, and Tron. Video game movies that were not based on video games, and or movies that were on cable a lot when Tom was a kid. So yeah, go watch them. Try not to get sucked into your own video game, and please don't hate me too much for all the digs about glasses, but you're wearing them. See you next week.